It's as though God rudely interrupts the people of Babylon and asserts himself in their own little game of control and destiny. And he reminds them of who he is. While they are consumed with worshiping Marduk and all the various gods that support him, and then consult the powers of darkness to manipulate forces and to determine what the future holds for them, God walks into the party and asserts his own character and being, and disrupts everything for them. The Lord has a way of doing that. People feel that life is going on and they are at ease, all is going well, and all of a sudden they have to be reminded from time to time that there is a God in the heavens to whom they are accountable. And sometimes reality breaks through. And all of the foolishness that they've been occupied with is suddenly exposed to be nothing. All the things they had confidence in, their pleasures, their prosperity, their religious beliefs, all of a sudden begin to crumble before them. Perhaps they hear word that a relative has passed on. Perhaps they themselves get a diagnosis of cancer or something to that effect. And their whole world becomes shaken. Because God has the temerity to step into the world from time to time and disturb their little peace. So in the 4th verse, Isaiah affirms who the Lord is. And he sets him apart from the gods of the Babylonians. He is the God of Israel. And he acts to defend Israel. He works on her behalf. Now, having said that, Isaiah will go on to talk about how the God of Israel, the Lord, their Redeemer, is the one who actually has brought the Babylonians into Israel to judge his people. God, being the Lord over the heavens and the earth, allowed the Babylonians to come and to devastate Judea and Jerusalem. God had his own purposes in mind for that. Because his people were abandoning him, they were wicked. So God would discipline that nation. But what God does here is say to the Babylonians in all of their pride that they have come into Israel and they did much more than what God would have prescribed in terms of what was right to do. The Babylonians came in with their own intentions in mind. And so they came in and they had no mercy on those who were poor, weak among the people of Israel. God took special notice of that. And so, whereas in the first 3 verses of the chapter, God announces or gives a vision of the judgments that will come upon the Babylonian Empire, how they will be devastated and brought low and become slaves. In verses 5 and following, he explains the reason why that's going to happen. And the first cause of that is the way that they have treated the people of God. Even though Israel had been rebellious against the Lord and had wandered away from the Lord in many ways, and God was bringing discipline into their lives through the Babylonians, God would not simply sit back idly and allow the Babylonians to do whatever they wished, venting their own wickedness and having no mercy on those who were poor and weak. So God comes and he's going to make the Babylonians answer for their actions. The Lord is the judge of the nations of the earth. God's relationship is not simply to his people or those who enter into a personal covenant relationship with him. He is the God of the heavens and the earth. All the nations are under his lordship and dominion, and they are all accountable to him for how they behave, specifically and particularly how they treat the people of God. And even when the people of God are not living the way they ought to live, if they are mistreated, God will come to their defense. It's a word of warning to the nations of the world today who would afflict the Christian church even in her humility. When there are small congregations in Africa, or in the Middle East, or in China, or in perhaps Korea, North Korea. Folks who profess faith in Jesus Christ, but are weak. Don't have any political power, no political might, no government to stand in their place and to defend them. They have a God who defends them, a God who observes and watches over His elect throughout all the nations of the earth. And God will judge. God's eye is on His people. He is the Redeemer of Israel. But Isaiah goes on to explain the reasons why God would bring judgment upon the Babylonian kingdom, not simply because of the foolhardy way in which they attacked the people of God, but also because of the arrogance, the pride that dominated their spirit. They said, I am, and there's none like me. Do you sense the repercussions of what they are saying? They're not just simply saying, I have a wonderful life, and I'm enjoying living in prosperity. When they make that claim, I am, and there's none besides me, they're making a claim to deity. You see, at heart, while there is this show of the worship of the gods of the Babylonians, Marduk and Nebo and all the rest of them, in the end, really it's that whole society that's being elevated. The Babylonian kingdom is being elevated. The state is being elevated as though it were divine. I am, and there's none besides me. There's a divine element in the state. And people were placing their faith and trust in that they were secure, and that their prosperity would never falter. This arrogance and pride would elevate itself in the life of Babylon to such an extent that God would bring judgment upon the proud and cast them low. You have many prophecies in the Old Testament of God's judgment upon the Babylonians for their great pride. Now God would bring them low. Pride is something which arrogates itself into the place of being God and rejecting God's own lordship and dominion over all things. And people in our modern age who reject the claims of the Christian faith, who reject the claims of the God of the Bible, and really describe themselves as materialists or secularists, people who may not want to make any particular claims about the spiritual world. They're, if you will, agnostic about those things, and rather would simply explain the world based on what they themselves know and can see. They, in effect, are putting themselves up into the ultimate position of being God. And when you look at political philosophy and the developments of political philosophy, even in our own country, you see that there's been a great faith being placed in the government, in the state, as a religion. It is the religion of humanity. And no one questions the rights of the state to do what it does. Whatever the state decides to do, we must submit to it. The individual must surrender his rights to the all-powerful state.